Well, at a time when we just can't get enough of the Cincinnati Bengals, there is a new book coming out about the history of the Bengals from the very beginning to what we saw last season, this amazing, surprising, thrilling run that the Bengals made to the Super Bowl. Jeff Suess and Rick Pender are the authors of The Cincinnati Bengals, an Illustrated Timeline. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Betsy.
Rick, I'll start with you. What was the idea that came to you both about writing this book? And what are we going to learn from this book that maybe we've never known about the Bengals before?
Yeah. Well, this idea quite literally came to us. Jeff and I have both written books for a publisher out of St. Louis. And our books tend to be more about history in general. But last, I guess it was in February, or maybe late January, we got approached by the publisher who said, "How about a book about the Bengals?" And we said, "Well, yeah, that sounds interesting, but when do you want it?" They wanted the text by the 1st of April, and that wasn't very much time. So that's how we ended up as co-authors on this, because two people can work twice as fast as one, I guess. But we both were eager to take an historic approach to this because the team has a great and interesting history, and we were glad to be able to put that in the context of the city and the NFL and all that sort of thing. So while we talk about the success and sometimes the lack of success of the franchise, we really made an effort to chronologically show how this all came together and why it's important to take a look at it.
So we talk a lot about this version of the Bengals having a chip on their shoulder as they're going through the playoffs. But Jeff, really, this franchise was started with someone who had a chip on their shoulder, and that was Paul Brown.
Yeah, well, Paul Brown had, founded the Cleveland Browns and had such success there with championships, many championships, and was kind of unceremoniously fired by Art Modell, and lost the family business, if you will. And so they started the Bengals, in '68 here with the whole idea of kind of getting Paul Brown back into football because he thought he had a lot to contribute. And he was really excited about being in the same division once they got to the NFL. They were in the AFL for 2 years and the NFL with the Browns and got to play them every year twice. And those were like the Super Bowls for the team in the early days. They were the grudge matches that Paul Brown was really excited to win. And that was a big motivation for him, kind of proving that he still had it. And he did. They actually made the playoffs, won their division, made the playoffs in their very first year in the NFL. And they had some amazing players, the drafting and stuff that they had done, even in the AFL. Greg Cook was a great player with the University of Cincinnati. And as a quarterback, had a phenomenal year as a rookie season, but he got injured in his first year and played through the pain. Bill Walsh, the great 49er coach, was the Bengals offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach back then. And he has said that Greg Cook was the best talent he ever had at quarterback, and considering he coached, Joe Montana and Steve Young and some of that. That early team was a phenomenal team. Unfortunately, Greg Cook, the injury was too severe, and he only really played that 1 year. And it's kind of that what could have been. And that for a lot of times in the Bengals history, there's little bits of those what could have been, what if. And now it seems like they're really fulfilling that potential that they've had all those years.
That's true.
That injury to Cook was actually a rotator cuff. And it was before the world of medicine knew really how to repair such things. So they just, gave him pain relief, and he kept playing. And of course, it did not heal. It was a shame.
And you talk about, what ifs, and so many of those happened throughout the Bengals' history. You can talk about what ifs the first 2 times they went to the Super Bowl. What if? We had Kenny Anderson, who deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, my opinion. You had Kenny Anderson leading an amazing team. You had Boomer Esiason leading an amazing team. And it just seemed that every time they made the Super Bowl, something would happen. And of course, famously, especially for Boomer Esiason down in Miami, everybody thought that that was going to be the Bengals' year. And of course, we all know what happened with Stanley Wilson.
Yeah, Stanley Wilson, that was where he had a kind of a drug relapse the night before the Super Bowl and kind of went, missing. And just that and the injury to Tim Crumry early in the game, it was just really hard to overcome. They still had a phenomenal game. The thing about the Bengals is every Super Bowl, they have been some of the best games. They've been in it until the last few plays. Both 80s teams were phenomenal teams that the Ken Anderson and Boomer Esiason both won MVPs of those years. They just had really, really great teams. Unfortunately, they played with other legends of football as well. It's fun to see the connections between like Joe Montana and Joe Burrow now. It's like now we've got that. It's quite exciting.
Both of those Super Bowls in particular were interesting because of Bill Walsh, who had coached for the Bengals, and he did not get the head coaching job here. He left and eventually landed with the 49ers. And he was the coach against Cincinnati in both of those Super Bowls. And in fact, Sam Weish, who was coaching the Bengals the second time that they went to the Super Bowl, had been a backup quarterback for the Bengals back when Bill Walsh was there. So lots of back and forth through history. And in fact, Weish was also an assistant coach with the 49ers during the first Super Bowl. So when they came together in that second one, it was really like two old buddies, playing a game against one another. So again, another interesting historical aspect of all of this.
And when that second Super Bowl, when Weish and Walsh they met after the game at the center field, and they were it's like great friends, and they hugged each other and told them how much they loved each other, and they were as excited for each other as family, and so there's a big connection there.
So we go through the history of the Bengals, and you touched on some of the amazing players that the Bengals have had. Of course, Munoz, Chad Johnson, so much talent. But now we're in today's Bengals, and this team is different. This team is special. What do you both think really separates this team that we're seeing from some of the great teams and the great players that have been in the Bengals history before?
I think our final chapter of the book is called Believing in Burrow. And I think that, his arrival here, he's a tremendous individual talent, but he also seems to have gathered around him, or the ownership gathered around him, a set of players who very much believe in him and in the team's ability to carry forward no matter what gets thrown at them. I mean, look at this winning streak that they've had right up into the playoff. Mm-hmm. It's really quite incredible. But I think Joe is sort of he's the icon at the middle of it all, but the whole team has risen up with his inspiration.
Yeah, and I think people just want to play with him. You could see that in some of their recruiting of free agents and stuff, that, Joe Burrow is a reason that defensive players want to come play with the Bengals. It's not just his skills on the field, they're tremendous, but there's the belief that if we have number 9, we can win at all times. Mm-hmm. And that's just elevating everybody in their game.
And I think you're right. I think that, when you have that kind of a player, other players gravitate to them because they see a winner and they know a winner and they want to be part of a winning team. That's for sure. So the book is The Cincinnati Bengals, an Illustrated Timeline. Jeff Suess, Rick Pender, and gentlemen, my wish for you is that next year at this time, you will have had to write a whole brand new chapter to add to this book to talk about this year's, we hope, Super Bowl run. So Rick, Jeff, thank you so much. It is an entertaining book. Whether you're a casual fan or a lifelong fan of the Bengals, you will love it. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you.